When the Queen of Glass and Gravity knelt before a human, the war itself seemed to hold its breath across the throne chamber. Battle maps hovered like broken constellations. Systems burned in red above the floor. Admirals stood frozen. Prophets lowered their eyes. And every witness understood they were seeing something history had no right to show them. The ruler of an ancient empire in the Orion Reach, crown dimmed, asking one man from Earth for victory. And the human did not ask for gold, command, or a title. He looked at the collapsing stars, rubbed the scar on his jaw, and said, "Only this. Give me time." She had not come to humanity for ships. Because her empire had more ships than worlds, she had not come for weapons. Because her arsenals could crack moons and bend gravity, she had come because none of it mattered against the Valkyrie swarm. The enemy that learned from every attack before the wreckage had cooled. Crystal fleets had broken at Nerith, gravity lances failed at Core. Psionic choirs went silent above 7 ash-covered moons. Wherever the swarm descended, victory became a memory. But humans had earned a strange reputation along the frontier. They were not the strongest, richest, or wisest species. They were simply the least obedient to despair. They improvised when doctrine died, joked inside disaster. Built miracles from scrap and bad odds, so the Queen crossed a burning galaxy and stood before Elias Ward. Other species called him reckless. Humans called him impossible. When she asked how long he needed, he studied the war. And he answered, 9 days, and on the 9th. Either they die, or fear does. No one believed him. Not even the humans in the room. Still, the Empire opened its vaults. He was given access to ancient archives, sealed labs, dormant factories, and command codes. And then he began making choices that looked like madness. He abandoned strongholds instead of reinforcing them, evacuated holy worlds instead of defending them, cut supply lines, darkened colonies, scuttled stations, and let the Valkyrie take system after system. While noble houses whispered that the human had bought himself a theatrical failure, but Elias was not defending territory. He was teaching the enemy a habit. Loss after loss, retreat after retreat, he fed them patterns until the swarm began to trust what it saw. Because every perfect predator mistakes repetition for truth. And when the Queen confronted him above the ruined world of Selvarin, asking if this was humanity's answer, surrendered dressed as strategy. Elias turned from the tactical display and said the words later carved into war academies. If your enemy learns faster than you, teach it the wrong lesson by the 6th day. 40 more systems were gone by the 7th. Even Earth's diplomats stopped defending him. But behind the rings of a frozen gas giant, human crews were building the ugliest fleet in the galaxy. Freighters welded to mining frames, colony tugs wrapped in stolen armor, refinery holes turned into signal towers, obsolete carriers packed with drones. Nothing elegant, nothing noble, everything practical. Because Elias had discovered something terrible and useful. The Valkyrie did not just share tactics, they shared expectation. Each victory sharpened one vast predictive mind. And that mind had a weakness. If enough impossibilities struck it at once, the swarm would start fighting the ghosts of its own certainty. So on the 8th night, humanity used chaos as a weapon. False retreats turned into ambushes. Dead ships burst as data bombs. Civilian satellites screamed counterfeit orders in Velkar code. Boarding pods landed empty while asteroids arrived full of Marines. Gravity wells shifted without warning. And squadrons appeared in places no rational admiral would ever choose. Because no rational admiral had designed the attack. It had been made by a species that could turn panic into method. And when the first Valkyrie clusters began firing into one another, the stars seemed to recoil. What followed lasted 11 hours. And no witness told it the same way twice. The Empire called it redemption. The Valkyrie recorded it as paradox. Humans called it a mess. Elias stood on the carrier resolute, coffee gone cold beside his hand, feeding new absurdities into the battle faster than the swarm could correct for them. He sent rescue ships through kill corridors because the enemy would never expect mercy in the center of slaughter. He broke clean formations into clouds of independent pilots because discipline had become predictable. He opened broad channels filled with jokes, chatter, music fragments, and children's math lessons from old Earth archives. Noise on top of noise until the enemy's logic drowned in the irrational rhythm of the human mind. Then came the last move. Every retreat corridor of the previous 9 days had drawn the swarm into the shattered Vera expanse, where dead relay gates slept beneath debris fields. Elias had spent his stolen time turning those ruins into amplifiers. And when the bulk of the Valkyrie consciousness entered the trap, humanity did not fire first, it broadcast first. Billions of contradictory combat predictions, billions of impossible futures, billions of human decisions no machine could reduce to one law. The swarm hesitated, split, argued with itself at the speed of light. And in that instant of manufactured doubt, the Allied fleet struck, every lance, bomber, gun, and desperate hand across 300,000 ships. And the undefeated enemy broke like thin ice under marching boots when the killing ended. Wreckage drifted across the dawn edge of the expanse like the bones of a dead storm. The Queen boarded the Resolute without ceremony. Without guards, without the glow of her crown, she found Elias asleep in his chair. One boot unlaced, blood dry on his sleeve, looking less like a savior than a mechanic who had worked too many shifts. When he woke, she asked the question that would follow humanity into legend. Why did you ask for time? Elias looked out at the field of ruined stars and gave the most human answer possible. Because victory is easy to promise when you do not understand the problem. Time is what you ask for when you plan to understand it. The Queen lowered her head, not as ruler to subject, but as one survivor to another, and from that day forward, every Allied world taught the same law: never corner a human and call the outcome decided. Because when the galaxy begged for heroes, humanity sent workers. Gamblers, engineers, liars, thinkers, and exhausted men and women who could stare at the end of everything and still say, "Give us a little more time, we are just getting started."